You ever feel like you're trying to decipher a whole new language just to understand how businesses actually work? Operations management can sometimes sound like that, right? A whole universe of processes and jargon.
Definitely can seem that way from the outside.
But what if you could sort of bypass the textbook and get straight to the core insights? We've sifted through the research in our notes to bring you the essential DNA of OM, your fast track to being, well, seriously in the know.
That's right. Forget dry definitions. We've got a pretty rich collection of material here that really peels back the layers on how organizations, whether they're crafting physical goods or delivering vital services, orchestrate things behind the scenes.
Okay.
Our goal today is really to extract those fundamental concepts of operations management, giving you a robust understanding of what really matters without getting lost in all the tiny details.
Okay, so what's our flight plan for this deep dive? What are the key areas we're going to unpack?
Right. So we'll begin by clearly defining operations management and its core functions, the basics.
Got it.
Then we'll explore the, I think, fascinating world of different process types and dig into the fundamental transformation model that underpins, pretty much all operations.
The engine room, sort of.
Exactly. Then we'll look at the critical role of operations strategy in gaining a competitive edge and how businesses approach designing their products and services. That's crucial.
Yeah.
Next up, we'll look at the strategic decisions around facility location and layout, followed by the essential principles of total quality management.
TQM, right?
TQM. We'll also tackle the complexities of inventory management and finally discuss the vital aspects of production planning and control. So yeah, it's a comprehensive journey, but we'll be focusing on the really critical insights.
Okay, brass tacks time then. Beyond the title, what is operations management in practical terms?
At its heart, operations management, or OM, it's really about expertly handling the processes that take various inputs, like raw materials, labor, technology, that kind of stuff, and transform them into valuable outputs, the goods and services we all use. And it's crucial to understand this isn't just for manufacturing floors. It's equally relevant in service industries like healthcare or, say, finance.
Right, not just factories. Paint a picture for us. A real world scenario, maybe.
Okay, remember that bakery example we looked at? Flour, sugar, eggs. Those are the raw materials, the inputs.
Right.
The baking process itself, the mixing, the kneading, the oven time, that's the transformation.
The doing part.
Exactly. And the delightful cakes that emerge.
Yeah.
Those are the outputs. OM is the discipline that oversees this entire flow, making sure it's efficient, consistent, and delivers, high quality results every time.
And I guess even a small change, like different flour, could affect the final cake.
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating is that even a small change in one input can have a ripple effect through the whole operation. It's all connected.
Got it. So what are the core responsibilities within OM? What do these operations managers actually, do all day?
Well, there are three fundamental functions, really. First, designing the system. This involves big decisions about what products or services to offer and the best ways to create or deliver them.
Okay, the setup.
Then second is managing the operations. This is the ongoing stuff, the day-to-day tasks of production planning, scheduling resources, overseeing the workflow.
Keeping the wheels turning.
Right. And the third key function is improving the system. This covers things like quality control, process optimization, and finding ways to enhance performance continuously, always looking for better ways.
So it's not static, it's a dynamic cycle. Design, run, improve.
Precisely.
And you've mentioned processes a few times. Why is understanding processes so central to OM?
Think of a process as the engine of any operation. It's a defined sequence of interconnected activities that work together to transform those inputs into the desired outputs. Understanding the different types or archetypes of processes helps a business strategically align its operational capabilities with its goals. For instance, a company aiming for extreme customization needs a very different process setup than one focused on high volume standardized stuff.
Right, makes sense. So lay out those archetypes for us. What are the main ways organizations structure their work?
We can broadly categorize operational processes into four primary types. First, there's the job shop. Think of a bespoke tailor, highly customized, very low volume, often unique items.
One-off.
Exactly. Then we have the batch process, like our bakery example, producing moderate volumes of similar items in groups or batches.
Okay.
Next is the assembly line, the classic image, right? High volume, standardized production, like in car manufacturing.
Fordism.
Kind of, yeah. And finally, a continuous flow process. This is nonstop, highly standardized output, such as in an oil refinery or power generation.
Got it. So from super custom to just constantly running.
That's the spectrum. And what's interesting is that many businesses actually use a combination of these types in different parts of their operations. It's not always just one.
Right, a mix and match.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through the steps of a simple process just to make it really concrete?
Sure. Let's take a fast food restaurant. Simple example. The process starts with order taking from the customer. That order then goes to the cooking stage where the food's prepared. Next, it moves to packaging, getting the meal ready. And the final step is delivered to the customer.
Straightforward enough.
Yeah, each stage is a distinct activity in the overall process. But even here, spotting inefficiencies, maybe a delay between cooking and packaging, can lead to big improvements in speed and, customer happiness.
Right, finding those little bottlenecks. Now, we touched on the scope of OM earlier. How far-reaching is it within a company?
Oh, the scope is pretty extensive. It really covers everything from the initial product and service design, deciding what to offer and how it works, all the way through to strategic location and layout of the facilities.
Where you put things, yeah.
Exactly. It also includes critical management of inventory and the entire supply chain, making sure resources flow smoothly. Plus, OM is responsible for scheduling production and managing capacity to meet demand, and of course, ensuring quality and measuring performance to drive improvement. It touches almost everything.
It sounds like OM itself has changed quite a bit over time. Our sources gave a quick historical overview. What are the sort of pivotal eras?
Yeah, looking back, the pre-industrial era was mostly manual labor, craft production. Think skilled artisans making tools by hand.
Right.
The industrial age, that was the big revolution, mechanization, mass production. The Ford assembly line is the classic example.
It's a one changer.
Totally. The post-war era saw this growing focus on productivity and quality management with things like the Toyota production system introducing really innovative approaches.
Lean thinking.
Exactly. Lean, JIT started coming in.
Yeah.
And the modern day, it's characterized by more automation, lean, just-in-time inventory practices becoming more mainstream, and the growing influence of AI and data. Think Amazon's logistics or Tesla's manufacturing.
So a constant push for more efficiency, more innovation. Okay, let's dig into this core idea of transformation. You said it's central to OM. How does this value-adding process actually work?
The transformation process is really where operations creates value. It's the set of activities that take those initial inputs, materials, information, customer needs, whatever, and convert them into something more desirable or useful. Finished goods, delivered services, happy customers. The effectiveness of this transformation is, pretty much what determines success.
And there's a model for thinking about this, right? Input, transformation, output.
Precisely. You start with inputs. All the resources needed, materials, machines, labor, capital, information.
The ingredients.
Right. Then comes the transformation process itself. This varies wildly depending on the industry, manufacturing, assembly, service delivery, transport, you name it.
The cooking?
Kind of.
Yeah.
This results in outputs. The finished products, the services rendered. And crucially, there's feedback. This is information about the outputs and the process, customer reviews, performance data, defect rates.
That do we do?
Exactly. And that feedback informs adjustments to future inputs and the transformation process. It's a loop, vital for continuous improvement.
Can you illustrate that model with another example? Maybe something different from the bakery?
Sure, let's think about a hospital system. The inputs are the doctors, nurses, equipment, facilities, and of course the patients. The process involves diagnosis, treatment, perhaps surgery, care. The output is hopefully healthier patients.
The goal.
Right. And the feedback could be patient satisfaction surveys, data on recovery times, readmission rates, all things the hospital uses to refine its inputs, its training, its treatment protocols.
That makes the flow really clear. Now, operations managers aren't just watching these processes, they're constantly making decisions. What are the different levels of decisions they typically face?
Good question. In OM, decisions generally fall into 3 tiers based on their time horizon and impact. Strategic decisions are the big long-term ones. They have a significant impact on the organization's overall direction.
Like building a new factory.
Exactly. Or investing in a major new technology. Then you have tactical decisions. These are medium term, maybe a few months to a year out. Think about determining inventory levels for the next quarter or planning workforce needs.
Okay.
And finally, operational decisions. These are the short-term, day-to-day choices that keep things running smoothly, like scheduling specific jobs for today or handling an immediate customer issue.
So from the 30,000-foot view down to the ground level, and the business world is always changing, isn't it? What are some of the major challenges or maybe opportunities facing operations today?
Our sources point to 5 big areas. First, globalization. Huge opportunities for markets and sourcing, but also way more complexity in managing international supply chains and competition.
Right.
Second, technology. I mean, the pace of change with automation, AI, data analytics, it offers amazing potential for efficiency, but requires constant adaptation.
Deeping up.
Definitely. Third is sustainability. Growing pressure, and rightly so, to adopt environmentally responsible practices and manage resources well. Fourth, customer expectations. They just keep rising, don't they? Faster delivery, higher quality, more personalization.
Yeah, the Amazon effect.
Sort of, yeah. And finally, risk management. This has become super critical. Building resilience against disruptions, pandemics, geopolitical issues, cyber threats, you name it.
Risk management certainly feels like it's moved up the agenda for everyone lately, and that ties into societal expectations too, right? Which brings us to corporate social responsibility, CSR. How does that fit into operations management?
CSR is becoming increasingly baked into OM, not just an add-on. It's about making sure operational decisions and processes consider not just the bottom line, but also the ethical, social, and environmental impacts.
So doing good while doing business.
Essentially, yes. And it shows up in operations in lots of ways: sourcing sustainable materials, ensuring fair labor practices, reducing waste and emissions, things like that.
So it's about embedding responsible practices right into the operational core. What are the specific ways CSR plays out in OM, according to the sources?
Well, they highlight 5 key roles. Firstly, CSR significantly enhances brand reputation and builds customer trust. That's huge.
Definitely.
Secondly, it helps ensure regulatory compliance with all the evolving environmental and social standards, keeps you out of trouble.
Right.
Thirdly, it can genuinely boost employee morale and engagement. People want to work for companies that share their values. Fourthly, it increasingly attracts socially conscious investors and customers. Money follows ethics more and more, and ultimately it contributes to long-term sustainability for the business, the environment, and society.
It really does sound interconnected. Okay, so we've got a handle on the fundamentals. Now, let's zoom out a bit to strategy. How does a company's big picture business strategy connect with the nuts and bolts of operations?
Operations strategy is the crucial link. It's the long-term blueprint for the operations function, and it has to be tightly aligned with the company's overall business strategy.
Can't be working at cross purposes.
Exactly. It's how the day-to-day activities of making stuff or delivering services are orchestrated to support the company's broader competitive goals. Without that alignment, you could be really efficient at doing the wrong things.
Right. Give us a concrete example of that alignment.
Okay, say a company's main business strategy is cost leadership. They want to be the cheapest.
Like Walmart.
Then its operations strategy will focus on things like lean manufacturing to cut waste and pushing for economies of scale to lower unit costs. Every operational decision, from suppliers to factory layout, is viewed through that cost lens.
Gotcha. So the operations are built specifically to deliver low cost. And you mentioned different layers of strategy.
Yes, typically we think of 3 levels. Highest is corporate strategy. What businesses should we be in? How do we allocate resources across them?
The portfolio view.
Right. Below that is business strategy. How does this specific business unit compete in its market? Cost, quality, innovation, speed.
The competitive plan for one business.
Exactly. And finally, operations strategy gets really specific. How will the operations functions support that competitive approach? What about our processes, capacity, supply chain, quality systems?
The how-to guide for operations. And those competitive priorities you mentioned, cost, quality, innovation. Those are the ways companies choose to compete.
Precisely. Our sources list 5 main ones. Cost, being the low-cost leader, Walmart, Xiaomi. Quality, superior products or services, Apple, Toyota.
Right.
Flexibility, adapting quickly to changes, Dell customization, Swiggy food delivery, Delivery D. Speed and reliability. FedEx, Amazon Prime.
Speed's a big one now.
Huge. And 5th, innovation. Leading with new stuff. Tesla, Dyson. It's rare for a company to truly excel at all 5. Usually they pick 1 or 2 to really focus on.
You have to make choices. So can you clarify again the difference between that broader organizational strategy and the specific operations strategy?
Sure. Think of it like this. A broad organizational strategy might be become the market leader in widgets.
Big goal.
Right. The operations strategy translates that into actionable operational terms. Maybe reduce widget production costs by 10% this year, or implement a flexible manufacturing system to launch 3 new widget types.
Concrete actions.
Exactly. Or if the overall strategy is growth via product innovation, the operations strategy would then drive investments in R&D links and maybe more adaptable production lines.
Okay, that really clarifies the link. Now, a word that comes up constantly in operations is productivity. What are we actually measuring there?
Productivity is fundamentally about efficiency. It's the ratio of output, what we produce, to the inputs we consume to produce it.
Okay, output over input.
Simply put, yes. It tells us how effectively we're using our resources, labor, capital, materials, energy. Higher productivity usually means lower costs and better profitability.
And are there different ways to slice and dice that calculation?
Yes. Partial productivity looks at output relative to just one input, like labor productivity. Units produced per labor hour. Help see how well the workforce is doing.
Okay.
Multi-factor productivity, MFP, is broader. It compares output to the total cost of all relevant inputs. Labor, materials, overhead, capital. Gives a more holistic view of overall operational efficiency.
Our sources had some calculation examples. Can you quickly run through one of each?
Sure. For labor productivity, say a factory makes 1,000 widgets using 500 labor hours. Productivity is 1,000 divided by 500, so 2 widgets per labor hour.
Simple enough.
For multi-factor productivity, imagine a service firm generates, say, 10,000 rupees in revenue output, and its total input costs, labor, materials, overhead, add up to 3,500 rupees. MFP is 10,000 divided by 3,500, which is roughly 2.86. Meaning for every rupee spent on inputs, they generate about 2.86 rupees in revenue. Tracking these ratios over time is really where the value lies, seeing trends, seeing if improvements are working.
Right, watching the trend line. So higher ratios are generally better. What factors typically influence a company's productivity?
Several things have a big impact. Technology, obviously automation, better equipment can boost output significantly. The skills and training of the workforce are huge. A motivated, skilled team is more efficient. The design of the process itself, a smooth workflow, minimizes waste.
Fewer steps, maybe.
Or smarter steps. Material quality matters. Too fewer defects means less rework. And even the work environment, safety, ergonomics affects morale and output.
Makes sense. And what concrete steps can companies take to actually improve productivity?
Lots of techniques. Implementing lean principles to slash waste is a big one. Investing in employee training pays off. Upgrading equipment is often necessary. Rigorous quality control reduces wasted effort on defects. And better scheduling and planning ensures resources aren't sitting idle or hitting bottlenecks.
All seems logical. Now, even with a great operations strategy, putting it into practice can be tough. What are some common roadblocks or issues during implementation?
Yeah, good strategies can fail in execution. Our sources flag 5 key challenges. One is a lack of integration. Operations strategy doesn't align with marketing or finance, leading to conflicts.
Silos.
Big time. Resistance to change from employees is almost always a factor. People get comfortable.
True.
Inadequate data makes it hard to track progress or even know where the problems are. A short-term focus, just hitting quarterly numbers, can undermine long-term strategic goals.
Sacrificing the future for the present.
Kind of. And finally, a mismatch between goals and actual capabilities. Trying to execute a strategy without the right resources, skills, or infrastructure just won't work.
So it's not just the plan, but the alignment, the change management, the data, the long view, and the real capacity to do it. Okay, let's shift focus now to what the company actually offers, its products and services. How does OM play a key role in designing them?
Product and service design is absolutely foundational for operations, and OM is deeply involved right from the start. It's about defining the characteristics, the specs of a product, features, materials, function, Greek whole, or for a service, the processes, the interactions, the outcomes. It has to meet customer needs and fit the business strategy. And remember the difference. Products are tangible, like phones. Services are intangible experiences, like a hotel stay.
Right, so it's way more than just aesthetics. How does this design phase impact everything that comes after it in operations?
Oh, it has massive downstream effects. The design fundamentally determines the production or service delivery process, the steps, the equipment, the skills
It
needed.
should get staged.
Completely. It significantly affects cost, quality, and the time it takes to get the offering to market. It directly influences customer satisfaction and shapes the brand image. And ultimately, it dictates the resources needed throughout the life cycle. A bad design decision up front can cause headaches for years.
It sounds like a real make or break stage. What pushes companies to design something new or redesign an existing product or service?
Several things usually drive it. Changing customer demands and preferences are huge.
Fickle customers.
Well, yeah. Competition is another big one. Rivals launch new stuff. You have to respond. Technology opens up new possibilities for features or efficiency. The drive for cost reduction often leads to design simplification. And regulations, like new safety or environmental standards, can force changes too.
So adapting to the market, tech, costs, and rules, what are the typical phases involved in bringing a concept to life?
It generally follows a structured path, usually 5 key phases. It starts with idea generation, brainstorming, customer feedback, market research, R&D, looking at competitors.
Casting a wide net.
Right. Then feasibility analysis. Does this idea make sense? Market potential? Technically doable, financially viable.
Reality check.
Exactly. Third is design and development. This is where the detailed specs get created. Prototypes for products. Service blueprints for services.
The nitty-gritty.
Yep. Fourth is testing and refinement. Rigorous testing of those prototypes or service models, getting feedback, making tweaks.
Kicking the tires?
Pretty much. And finally, launch and implementation. Production or service delivery ramps up, marketing kicks in, it goes live.
A logical flow. Now, within product design, there are different angles or philosophies.
Yeah.
What are some key considerations?
One big one is standardization versus customization. Highly standardized products, like bottled water, are efficient to make but offer no choice. Highly customized, like a wedding gown, meets specific needs but costs more. It's a trade-off.
Finding the balance.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Then there's mass customization, trying to get the best of both worlds. Think Dell letting you configure your own PC online volume production, but with individual choices.
Clever.
Robust design is important too, creating products that work reliably, even if conditions aren't perfect. Like an umbrella designed to handle strong winds, not just a light drizzle.
Built tough.
Kind of. And designers also think about the degree of newness. Is it really new to the world, like the first iPhone was? Or just an addition to a line, like a new iPhone model? Or an improvement, like a faster chip? Or even repositioning an old product for a new market, like sugar-free cola?
Different levels of innovation. That's a lot to think about. Are there specific tools or techniques that help manage this design complexity?
Yes, definitely. Quality function deployment, QFD, is a really useful structured approach. It helps translate what customers want, the voice of the customer, into specific technical design requirements.
Connecting wants to specs.
Exactly. A key tool within QFD is the house of quality. It's a matrix, looks a bit like a house, that maps customer desires against product features and technical specs. Helps prioritize design efforts. For instance, if customers want a silent AC, QFD helps engineers focus on things like a low noise compressor.
A visual way to keep things customer focused. What other techniques are common?
Another insightful one is the Kano model. It categorizes features based on how customers perceive them and how they impact satisfaction. It identifies 3 types. Basic needs stuff you just expect, like brakes on a car. Their absence causes dissatisfaction.
Must-haves.
Right. Performance needs, where more is better, like longer battery life. Satisfaction increases linearly.
Makes sense.
And excitement needs unexpected wow, features that delight customers, like getting free headphones with a phone. They create high satisfaction if present, but no dissatisfaction if absent because they weren't expected. Understanding these helps prioritize feature investment.
That's a really helpful framework for thinking about features. So what's the bottom line? Why is getting design right so critical for operations?
Good design pays off significantly. It leads to higher product quality and a better customer experience. Simple as that. It improves operational efficiency and reduces waste during production or delivery. It strengthens brand value and differentiation. It ensures compliance with standards. And ultimately, it can lead to lower overall costs, manufacturing, service, support, everything.
Investing upfront in design really seems worth it. What are some typical stumbling blocks or issues in product and service design?
Several common challenges pop up.
Yeah.
Balancing cost versus quality is a constant tension.
The classic trade-off.
Always. Keeping up with fast-changing technology is tough. Considering environmental impact is increasingly non-negotiable, but adds complexity. Dealing with shorter product life cycles means design processes need to be faster, more agile.
Right.
And effectively integrating design with the supply chain and manufacturing can be tricky, but is absolutely essential for smooth execution.
Lots to juggle there. Okay, let's move on to a really foundational decision, where to actually locate the operations. Location planning sounds like a biggie with long-term effects.
Oh, absolutely. Location planning is the critical process of picking the best geographical spot for a company's facilities. It's a strategic decision with huge long-term implications.
Hard to undo.
Very hard and expensive. It significantly impacts operating costs, market access, overall competitiveness. A bad location can be a constant drag, while a good one provides a real edge. Getting it right up front is key.
So why is it so important? What makes location such a high-stakes decision?
Our sources point to 5 key reasons. First, location directly hits operating costs, rent, labor, transport, utilities. Big numbers. Second, it hugely impacts customer access and your ability to serve your target market effectively. Can people get to you?
Crucial for retail or services.
Definitely. Third, for many, it determines access to raw materials and suppliers. Fourth, it influences potential for future growth and scalability. Can you expand there? And finally, as we said, these are long-term strategic commitments, very sticky decisions.
Makes sense. Now, what factors do companies weigh up when choosing a location? Does it differ much between, say, a factory and a retail store?
Yes, the emphasis often shifts. For manufacturing, key factors frequently include proximity to raw materials to cut transport costs, quality of transport infrastructure, roads, rail, ports, availability and cost of skilled labor, reliable utilities, and maybe government incentives or regulations.
Inputs are key.
Right. For service organizations, priorities often lean towards customer accessibility and visibility, being close to the target market, things like parking or public transport access, real estate costs in prime areas, and the level of local competition.
Customers are key.
Exactly. Often a trade-off between being near inputs or near customers.
What are some of the major challenges or pitfalls in making these location choices?
5 key issues often come up. The potential high cost of relocating if you got it wrong initially. That complex trade-off between lower operating costs versus customer convenience.
Cost versus access.
Right. Finding a location with the right skilled labor force can be tricky. Political and economic stability is always a concern, especially internationally. And increasingly, companies have to consider the environmental and social impact on the local community.
A really multifaceted decision. Now, you mentioned location models. What are those? How do they help structure this decision?
Location models are basically quantitative tools. They provide a framework for evaluating and comparing different potential locations based on various factors. They bring a more analytical, data-driven approach to what can feel like an overwhelming choice.
Okay, let's hear about some of the main ones.
One widely used one is the factor rating method. Great when you have multiple criteria, both numbers and subjective things. You identify relevant factors, weight them by importance, score each location on each factor, then calculate a total weighted score.
How's that calculated?
Simple multiplication and addition. Total score, sum of, weight of factor, X score on factor. The location with the highest total score wins based on your criteria.
Systematic. What's another approach?
The load distance method. This is useful when transport costs are really dominant. You figure out the load volume of stuff or people moving between potential sites and other key points. Then calculate a score for each site by multiplying load by distance for all movements.
That formula.
Total load distance score, sum of load distances. The goal is the lowest total score, minimizing overall movement cost.
Makes intuitive sense. Minimize travel.
Then there's the center of gravity method, often used for finding a central spot for something like a warehouse, serving multiple stores or customers. It uses coordinates and demand volumes to calculate a weighted average location.
Like finding the geographical balance point.
Exactly, weighted by demand. It pinpoints a location that minimizes total transportation distance cost to all served points.
Yeah. And the last one you mentioned?
Break-even analysis for location. This focuses purely on costs. You figure out the fixed costs and variable costs per unit for each potential location. By plotting total cost against volume, you find the break-even point for each.
How does that help choose?
It's great for comparing locations with different cost structures, say, one with high fixed costs but low variable cost versus the opposite. The formula helps find the volume at which one location becomes cheaper than another. Quantity. Fixed cost location 2, fixed cost location 1, variable cost location 1, variable cost location 2. Helps pick the lowest cost option for your expected volume, particularly useful for capital versus labor-intensive decisions.
These models definitely add some rigor. What are the overall benefits of doing this kind of thorough location analysis?
Done well, it leads to lots of good things. Significantly reduced costs, both transport and operating, improved access for customers and suppliers, better workforce availability, potentially better service quality, and faster market response. And it really sets a strong foundation for strategic growth.
Sounds like time well spent. Okay, so you've picked the location. Now you need to figure out the best way to arrange things inside that location. That's process selection and layout planning.
Exactly. Process selection is about choosing how the best methods and tech for producing goods or delivering services. It depends heavily on volume, variety, flexibility needs, and cost targets. It's a strategic choice that affects everything else.
And like location, there's no single best way, right? Different types of processes.
Absolutely. Our sources outline 5 main types, moving along that volume variety spectrum we discussed. A project process for unique large-scale things like building a bridge.
One-off, complex.
Right. A job shop process for customized, low-volume, high-variety work, think custom furniture.
High mix, low volume.
A batch process for moderate volumes of similar items in batches our bakery or clothing factory.
Medium volume, some variety.
An assembly line or repetitive process for high volume, standardized stuff cars, electronics.
Low mix, high volume.
And finally, a continuous process for super high volume, highly standardized, non-stop flow oil refining, electricity.
Got it. The spectrum again, why is picking the right process type so important strategically?
It's critical. It ensures your operational capabilities align with your strategy. It lets you meet demand cost effectively. It heavily influences your facility layout and equipment choices. It impacts quality and consistency, and it enables future growth and scaling. Get the process wrong, and you're fighting an uphill battle.
A really foundational decision. What key factors do companies need to weigh when selecting a process?
Key things include the expected volume and variety of what you're making or doing. How much flexibility do you need to handle changes? What's the right level of capital intensity? How much automation versus labor? What technology is available and suitable? And what's the required lead time to meet customer expectations?
Balancing all those factors, once a process is chosen, how do companies visualize and analyze the steps? You mentioned flowcharts.
Yes, process flowcharts are super valuable. They visually map out every single step, like for making a t-shirt. Order received, cut, fabric, soup print, make, pack, ship.
Seeing the whole sequence.
Exactly. And they're great for spotting bottlenecks, finding inefficiencies, improving the workflow, and maybe detecting redundant steps you can eliminate.
A visual tool for improvement. And you also mentioned a process performance matrix. How does that fit in?
The process performance matrix is a simple visual grid. It plots product variety, low to high, on one axis, and production volume, low to high, on the other.
Okay.
You can then position the different process types on this matrix. Job shops are high variety, low volume. Assembly lines are low variety, high volume. Batch processes are somewhere in the middle. It helps visualize if your chosen process type fits your product strategy regarding volume and variety.
A quick check for alignment. Okay, so you've chosen the process. Now, arranging the physical space, facility layout, what's the main goal there?
The main goal of facility layout planning is to arrange everything, machines, workstations, storage, offices within the physical space to allow for the most efficient flow. Flow of materials, flow of information, flow of people. Good flow means higher productivity, better safety, lower costs.
And just like processes, there are standard layout types.
Yes, 5 common ones. A product layout arranges things sequentially, following the steps to make a specific product. Think assembly line.
Straight line.
Pretty much. A process layout groups similar functions or machines together. Hospitals do this, surgery wing, radiology depth, or machine shops, all lathes together.
Grouping by function.
Right. A fixed position layout is when the product stays put because it's too big and resources come to it. Shipbuilding, aircraft assembly.
Bringing the factory to the product?
Kind of, yeah. A cellular layout groups machines into small, U-shaped cells that process families of similar parts. Improves flow for batch type work.
Mini factories?
Sort of. And a hybrid layout just mixes elements of these types. Supermarkets often do this product layout for aisles, process layout for deli or bakery.
Choosing the best fit. Why is getting the layout right so crucial?
An optimized layout brings big benefits. It reduces material handling time and effort. That saves money and time.
Less movement.
Exactly. It minimizes overall operational costs. It enhances safety and employee satisfaction. Less clutter, better workflow. It can improve communication, and it can increase flexibility to adapt to changes.
Seems important. Now for product layouts, you mentioned line balancing. What's the aim there?
Line balancing is specifically for assembly lines or product layouts. The goal is to distribute the total workload as evenly as possible across all the workstations on the line.
Why?
To minimize idle time at some stations and prevent bottlenecks at others. If the work isn't balanced, the whole line can only go as fast as the slowest station. Balancing maximizes the line's efficiency and output rate.
And there are calculations involved. Cycle time.
Yes, cycle time, CT, is key. It's the maximum time allowed at each workstation to complete its tasks. You calculate it by dividing the available production time per period, like minutes per day, by the required output units per day.
The pace of the line.
Exactly. The theoretical minimum number of workstations, N, is the lowest possible number of stations you could need. Calculate it by summing up all the task times needed for one unit and dividing that total by the cycle time.
The absolute ideal minimum.
Right. Efficiency then measures how close you get to that ideal, comparing total task time to the actual number of stations times the cycle time.
Our sources had an example.
Yeah. Imagine total assembly time for a product is 14 minutes, sum of all tasks, and you need 30 units per hour, so 60 minutes available. The cycle time is 60 minutes, 30 units equals 2 minutes per unit.
Okay.
The theoretical minimum of workstations is total task time, 14 minutes, cycle time 2 minutes, 7 workstations. In reality, you might need 8 or 9 depending on how tasks group, but 7 is the theoretical floor.
Aiming for that minimum, what if one single task takes longer than the cycle time, say 3 minutes?
That's a problem. That task becomes an instant bottleneck. You can't run the line at a 2-minute cycle time if one task takes 3 minutes. You'd have to consider splitting that task into smaller parts done at different stations, if possible.
Break it down.
Or maybe re-engineer the task to make it faster. Or sometimes use parallel stations, have 2 stations doing that 3-minute task simultaneously to keep up with the 2-minute cycle time overall.
Options exist. And for process layouts, where similar machines are grouped, is balancing time the focus?
Not in the same way. With process layouts, the focus shifts to arranging the departments or machine groups to minimize the total travel distance for materials and people moving between them. Since different products might take different routes, you try to optimize the overall flow and reduce backtracking or long trips.
Minimizing movement between areas.
Exactly. Efficiency is measured more by reduced travel time, waiting time between departments, and material handling costs.
Got it. So what are common issues or challenges in process selection and layout planning generally?
Some frequent ones include poor forecasting, choosing a process or layout based on wrong demand assumptions. High setup times in batch processes can kill efficiency. Bottlenecks emerging in unexpected places. The layout being too inflexible to handle changes. And just generally poor flow, leading to wasted time, high costs, and frustration.
Careful planning seems key. Okay, let's switch to a topic vital for long-term success: quality. We're diving into total quality management. TQM, what's the core philosophy?
Total quality management, TQM, is really a fundamental shift in how an organization thinks about quality. It's a holistic, integrated management approach. The focus is on continuous improvement in everything the organization does.
Not just the final product.
Not at all. From design through delivery and beyond. And it involves everyone, top to bottom, in pursuing customer satisfaction. You could almost say TQM equals quality in products plus quality in processes plus quality in people.
So it's a culture, not just a department. What are the core principles driving TQM?
5 key principles stand out. First and foremost, customer focus. Understanding and exceeding customer needs is paramount.
Number 1.
Absolutely. Second, continuous improvement, or Kaizen. Always seeking small, ongoing improvements. Third, employee involvement. Empowering everyone to contribute to quality.
Using everyone's brain power.
Exactly. Fourth, a process-centered approach, focusing on improving the processes that create the results. And fifth, fact-based decision-making, using data, not just gut feelings, to drive improvements.
Solid principles. What are the big benefits a company gets from truly embracing TQM?
The payoffs are substantial. Significantly enhance customer satisfaction and loyalty. That's huge.
Repeat business.
Right. A culture of continuous improvement makes the organization more adaptive and efficient over time. It leads to improved operational efficiency and less waste. It can boost employee morale, people like being part of a quality operation, and ultimately it strengthens competitiveness by delivering superior value.
Now, quality itself, it's not just one thing, is it? Are there different dimensions?
That's right. It's multidimensional and slightly different for products versus services. For manufactured products, think about performance. Does it work? Durability, how long does it last? Conformance, does it meet specs? Reliability, does it work consistently? Aesthetics, how does it look, feel? And serviceability, is it easy to fix?
Okay, tangible stuff, mostly.
Mostly. For services, dimensions include tangibles, appearance of facilities, staff, materials, reliability, performing the service dependably, responsiveness, willingness to help promptly, assurance, staff knowledge, courtesy, conveying trust, and empathy, carrying individualized attention.
More about the experience. So, why is achieving high quality so critical in operations beyond just happy customers?
High quality directly impacts the bottom line and efficiency. It reduces defects and the associated costs, rework, scrap, returns. That saves money.
Big savings.
It builds customer trust and loyalty, as you said. It enhances operational efficiency because you're doing things right the first time, minimizing errors and wasted effort. It leads to less wastage of materials. And fundamentally, it improves competitiveness. You can often command better prices or gain market share with superior quality.
Okay, so how do companies actually manage quality? What are the tools they use?
There's a classic toolkit, often called the 7 basic quality control QC tools. They include the check sheet, simple data collection, histogram, shows data distribution, Pareto chart, highlights the vital few causes, the 80-20 rule.
Finding the big hitters.
Exactly. The cause and effect diagram, or Fishbone Ishikawa diagram for brainstorming root causes. Scatter diagram looks for relationships between variables. Control charts monitors processes over time. And the flow chart maps process steps, as we discussed.
Practical, data-driven tools. What about the costs involved in managing quality? Is it expensive?
Well, there's the cost of quality, COQ concept. It breaks down quality-related costs into 4 types. Prevention costs, money spent to prevent defects training, quality planning, good design.
Investing up front.
Right. Appraisal costs, costs of checking for quality inspections, testing, audits,
Solving problem.
internal failure costs, costs of defects found before reaching the customer rework, scrap, downtime,
Catching mistakes inside.
and external failure costs. Costs of defects found after reaching the customer warranty claims, returns, complaints, lost reputation. These are often the most expensive.
Ouch.
Yeah. The key idea is that investing more in prevention is usually way cheaper than paying for failures, especially external ones. An ounce of prevention.
Worth a pound of cure. Makes sense. Now, Six Sigma, we hear that term a lot. How does it relate to TQM?
Six Sigma is a very specific, rigorous, data-driven methodology within the broader TQM philosophy. Its goal is to minimize defects and variability to an extremely high level, aiming for just 3.4 defects per million opportunities,
Right.
DPMO.
But that's precise.
It is. While TQM is the overarching culture, Six Sigma provides a structured toolkit, often statistical, for tackling specific quality problems and achieving breakthrough improvements.
And has its own process, DMAIC.
Yes. For improving existing processes, it uses DMAIC. Define the problem, measure performance, analyze root causes, improve the process, control the improved process to sustain gains.
Okay.
For designing new processes or products to meet Six Sigma standards from the start, there's DMADV. Define goals, measure requirements, analyze options, design the solution, verify the design. Very structured.
Very methodical. What about keeping processes on track day to day? Statistical process control.
Exactly. Statistical process control,
Yeah.
SPC, uses statistical techniques to monitor and control processes in real time. The main tool is the control chart.
You mentioned that earlier.
All right. It plots data points over time against statistically calculated upper and lower control limits. If points stay within the limits and show random patterns, the process is in control. If points go outside the limits or show non-random patterns, it signals something's changed. The process is out of control and needs investigation.
A warning system.
Pretty much. Allows you to catch problems early before you make lots of defective products.
And different charts for different data types.
Yes. For variable data, measurements like weight, length, you typically use X bar charts for averages and R charts for range or variability.
Okay.
For attribute data, counts like number of defects or proportion defective, you use B charts for proportions, or C charts for counts of defects per unit. The formulas for the control limits are based on statistical properties of the data.
Matching the tool to the data. What if you can't inspect everything? Like checking every single screw in a batch of millions?
That's where acceptance sampling comes in. When 100% inspection is impractical or too costly, you take a random sample from a batch, a lot.
Yeah.
You inspect the sample. Based on how many defects you find in that sample, you decide whether to accept the entire batch or reject it. It's a statistical gamble, balancing the risk of accepting a bad batch versus rejecting a good one. Needs careful planning.
A pragmatic approach for large volumes. And finally, how do you know if a process is even capable of meeting the required quality specs in the first place?
That's measured by process capability. It compares the inherent variability of your process, how much it naturally fluctuates, to the tolerance limits set by the design or customer specs.
Can it hit the target consistently?
Basically, yes. A common metric is the capability ratio, CP. The formula is upper spec limit, lower spec limit, 6 process standard deviation. A CP of 1.0 or greater generally means the process's natural variation fits within the spec limits, so it's considered capable. Higher is better.
A score for capability. Okay, with all these tools and ideas, what makes implementing TQM successfully so hard sometimes?
Several common hurdles. A big one is lack of real commitment from top leadership. If the bosses aren't truly behind it, it often fizzles out.
Needs to come from the top.
Absolutely. Resistance to the necessary culture change is another major one. TQM requires a different way of thinking and working.
People don't like change.
Often true. Inadequate training on the principles and tools limits effectiveness. Poor communication across departments hinders the needed collaboration. And a failure to align quality goals with overall business strategy means it might not get the focus or resources it needs.
So it really needs that holistic commitment. Okay, let's switch gears to another critical area, inventory management. What's involved there?
Inventory is basically any stock of resources a company holds: raw materials, components waiting to be used, work in progress, partially finished goods, or finished goods ready to sell.
Stuff sitting around.
Essentially, inventory management is the whole process of planning, sourcing, storing, and controlling all that stuff. The goal is a balancing act. Have enough to meet demand and keep operations running smoothly, but minimize the costs and risks of holding too much.
Why is that balancing act so important? What's the payoff for getting inventory right?
Getting it right offers big advantages. It significantly reduces costs, holding costs, ordering costs. It improves cash flow because less money is tied up in stock just sitting there.
Frees up cash.
Exactly. It minimizes the risk of waste, things getting old, damaged, or obsolete. It helps you meet customer demand reliably, avoiding stockouts and lost sales. And good inventory data helps with better forecasting and planning. Poor inventory management, conversely, can sink a business.
High stakes. What are the different costs involved in inventory?
Typically 5 main types. Ordering costs, expenses each time you place an order: admin, shipping, holding or carrying costs, costs of storing inventory, warehouse space, insurance, capital costs.
It costs money to keep stuff.
It does. Stockout costs, the price of not having inventory when needed, loss of sales, customer goodwill, purchase costs, the actual price paid for the items, and setup costs. Expenses for preparing equipment for a production run, relevant if you make your own inventory. Minimizing the total of these is the goal.
Trying to find that lowest total cost point. What are the common systems for controlling inventory levels? Q model, T model.
Right, those are the 2 basic models. The Q model, fixed order quantity. You order a fixed quantity, like 100 units, whenever inventory drops to a specific reorder point. Works well for stable demand items.
Triggered by quantity level.
Yes. The economic order quantity, EOQ formula, helps find the optimal fixed quantity for this model, the quantity that minimizes the sum of ordering and holding costs. The formula is SCORT 2, annual demand ordering cost, holding cost per unit.
Okay, and the P model?
The P model, fixed time period. You check inventory levels at fixed time intervals, say every Monday, and order enough to bring the stock back up to a target level. The order quantity varies each time.
Triggered by time.
Right. Often used when ordering multiple items from one supplier periodically is convenient.
Got it. What makes managing inventory so challenging today? What are the big headaches?
5 key challenges pop up. First, uncertainty. Both demand and supplier lead times can be unpredictable. Makes planning hard.
Guessing game sometimes.
Can feel like it. Second, the risk of overstocking. Too much cost, obsolescence, versus understocking, lost sales, unhappy customers. A constant balancing act.
Right.
Third, controlling those high holding and stockout costs. Fourth, poor tracking systems. If you don't know accurately what you have, you can't manage it well. Garbage in, garbage out. And fifth, inefficient coordination with suppliers and across the supply chain. Disruptions ripple through quickly.
Lots of potential pitfalls. You mentioned safety stock earlier. How does that help with uncertainty?
Safety stock is basically extra inventory held as a buffer against unexpected variations in demand or lead time. It's insurance against stockouts.
How much insurance do you need?
Good question. It depends on how much demand varies, how reliable your suppliers are, and what service level you want to provide. For G, do you want to meet demand 95% of the time from stock or 99%? More variability or a higher desired service level means more safety stock is needed.
A calculated buffer. Are there other inventory models beyond the basic EOQ and P model?
Yes, several for specific situations. The quantity discount model helps decide if taking a supplier's discount for buying a larger quantity is worth the extra holding cost.
Bulk discount trade-off.
Exactly. The single period model, or news vendor model, is for items with a short selling season, or perishables, newspapers, seasonal fashion, fresh food. Helps decide how much to stock when you only get one shot, balancing unsold leftovers versus missed sales.
High stakes ordering.
Yeah, and the production order quantity POQ model, or EPQ, is like EOQ, but for when you produce your own inventory gradually over time, instead of getting it all at once from a supplier. The formula adjusts for the production rate.
For make-to-stock situations, what about managing all the components needed for complex products? Material requirements planning.
Right. Material Requirement Planning, MRP, is a computer system, really, designed to figure out exactly what raw materials components are needed, in what quantities, and when they're needed to meet the production schedule for finished goods.
Keeping track of all the parts.
Precisely. It needs three key inputs: the master production schedule, MPS, what finished goods to make and when, the bill of materials, BOM, the recipe lists all parts for one finished product, and the inventory status file, what you currently have in stock. MRP then calculates net requirements and plans orders accordingly, ensures the right parts arrive at the right time.
Sounds essential for manufacturing. And finally, ABC inventory planning. What's that about?
The ABC inventory planning system categorizes inventory based on its annual dollar usage value, using the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule.
Okay, yeah.
A items, small number of items, maybe 10-20%, but account for a huge chunk of the total inventory value, 70-80%, high value. Need tight control, frequent review.
The important few.
C items, lots of items, maybe 60-70%, but represent very little total value, 10-20%. Low value, can use simpler controls, less frequent checks.
The trivial many.
Right. And B items are in the middle. This lets you focus your limited inventory management time and effort on the items that matter most financially.
Smart prioritization. Okay, we've covered planning and managing resources extensively. Let's zero in now on managing the actual production itself. Production planning and control, or PPC.
Exactly. Production planning and control, PPC, covers both sides. Planning, deciding what, when, how much to produce, and control, monitoring progress, making adjustments to ensure the plan happens. Planning sets the course, control keeps the ship on course. They're tightly linked.
Plan the work, work the plan. What are the main goals of good production planning?
5 key objectives. Optimize resource use. Labor, machines, materials, get the most out of them. Ensure timely delivery of products. Maintain consistent quality. Reduce costs and waste. And improve workflow, eliminating bottlenecks and delays in the factory.
All sounds critical for efficiency. What are the typical steps in the planning process itself?
It usually flows like this. Starts with forecasting demand, then routing, figuring out the sequence of operations and machines for each product, then scheduling, setting start and end times for jobs, considering resources and priorities.
Putting it on the calendar.
Right. Then dispatching, releasing the orders and instructions to the shop floor to actually start the work. And finally, follow up and control monitoring progress against the schedule and taking corrective action if things go off track.
A continuous cycle. Scheduling sounds particularly tricky with lots of jobs and limited machines. Are there common rules or techniques used to decide which job goes next?
Yes, several common scheduling or priority rules exist. First come, first serve, FCFS, is simple process jobs in arrival order. Shortest processing time, SPT, prioritizes the quickest jobs first, tends to reduce average waiting time.
Get the easy ones done.
Kind of. Earliest due date, EDD, prioritizes jobs with the closest deadlines, good for minimizing lateness. Slack prioritizes jobs with the least slack time remaining. And the critical ratio, CR, compares time remaining till the due date with the processing time still needed. CR less than 1 means you're already late.
Mathematical priorities.
Yeah, and there are more complex ones, like Moore's rule, minimizes number of late jobs, and Johnson's rule optimizes scheduling jobs across 2 sequential machines to minimize total completion time.
Different rules for different goals. What makes scheduling so challenging in the real world?
Oh, lots of things. Resource availability changes. Machines break down, people call in sick, materials arrive late.
Reality bites.
Doesn't it? Priority conflicts arise. Which urgent job is most urgent? Processing time estimates can be inaccurate. Bottlenecks pop up unexpectedly. And constant pressure to meet tight customer expectations adds complexity. It's a dynamic puzzle.
Definitely sounds like juggling. What about planning at a higher level, beyond individual jobs? Aggregate planning.
Yes, aggregate planning takes a medium-term view, typically 3 to 18 months out. It focuses on balancing overall production levels, workforce size, and inventory levels to meet forecasted aggregate demand, like total demand for a product family, not specific models.
The bigger picture over the medium term.
Right. The goals are to set general rates for production, staffing, and inventory that minimize costs while meeting the anticipated demand, bridging the gap between long-term strategy and short-term schedules.
How do companies approach that? What are the main strategies?
3 main pure strategies. A level strategy. Keep production rate and workforce constant. Let inventory absorb the ups and downs of demand. Good for workforce stability, but inventory costs can be high.
Steady production.
A chase strategy. Match production exactly to demand by hiring and firing workers as needed. Minimizes inventory, but labor costs and morale issues can be significant.
Chasing demand.
And a mixed strategy. Uses a combination of tactics, some workforce adjustment, some inventory fluctuation, maybe subcontracting, trying to find a balance that minimizes total cost. Most companies use some kind of mixed strategy.
Finding the best compromise. Why is aggregate planning important? What benefits does it provide?
It's really valuable. It improves decision making about resource allocation over the medium term. It can reduce overall costs by better matching capacity to demand. It provides stability for operational planning. It helps meet customer demand more reliably. And it ensures production plans align with strategic goals and sales forecasts. It connects the dots.
A crucial link in the chain. Okay, so plans are made. How do companies make sure things actually happen as planned on the shop floor? That's production control.
Exactly. Production control is all about ensuring actual output matches the plan. Key activities include monitoring progress, measuring performance against targets, identifying deviations, and taking corrective action quickly. It's also about managing disruptions, breakdowns, material shortages, anything unexpected that throws a wrench in the works.
Real-time steering. What are the objectives of a good production control system?
5 main goals. Ensure on-time delivery. Maintain quality standards. Minimize downtime and delays. Coordinate different production units effectively. And ensure flexibility to adapt when needed. Keep things running smoothly and efficiently according to plan.
Keeping the promises made in the plan. Lastly, you mentioned linear programming. How does that optimization technique fit into PPC?
Linear programming, LP, is a powerful mathematical tool. It helps find the best solution, like minimum cost or maximum profit, for problems where the objective and constraints can be expressed as linear equations or inequalities.
Math to find the optimal way.
Pretty much. In PPC, LP can optimize the allocation of scarce resources, machine time, labor, materials, to achieve goals like minimizing production costs or maximizing output, while respecting all the limitations, constraints, like machine capacity or material availability. Our sources mention the standard form, the simplex method for solving, and the concept of duality, which gives economic insights.
Sounds powerful for complex decisions. What are some specific ways LP is used in operations?
Oh, loads of applications. Allocating production capacity across different products, minimizing costs for a production plan, maximizing output with limited resources, planning workforce levels over time, solving complex transportation and scheduling problems to minimize costs or time. It's a really versatile tool for resource allocation decisions.
A really valuable tool in the OM toolkit.